Siddons slid away another hide wrapping, another. The next broke at his touch, into irregular flakes like old paper. "Old and rotten," pronounced Siddons. "Now the fifth layer. It must be 200 years old. And here's something that isn't rawhide." From the last swaddling he lifted a strange thing like a rectangular brick, as large as a commercial cement block. It was cushioned inside the rawhide by something, perhaps leaves or grass or herbs, all rotted to powder. "All rotted to powder," explained Siddons, as though lecturing amiably to a class. "Look, it's hollow. Got a little slab of baked clay for a lid. Comes off easily. Inside, another small hollow brick. You may be right, Mr. Thunderstone. The T's must have had an ancient history of something close to civilization to do this sort of brickwork." Inside the second, a third, each nested in old leafy dust. And here we must be at the heart of the thing. Let's hope so. He held up a vase of pottery, so old that the red of the clay was darkened to a mahogany brown. It was no larger than a man's fist, shaped like an egg, with a flattened end to stand on. Siddons poked and twisted. "Look, the top comes off, unscrews. Who'd have thought that Indians understood the screw principle and would apply it to pottery?" "I'm leaving these things, and you, Mr. Thunderstone, for Longspear to find." His grin grew wider. "Why don't you take notes, Mr. Thunderstone? You're sitting in on a notable event, the opening of an invaluable sacred bundle of a heathen people, and the notes might be important. Longspear may be so disappointed in you that he'd destroy you before you had a chance to tell verbally what you saw." "Well then, if Longspear destroys anyone, it will be you," predicted Thunderstone. "Oh, he'll try, and I'll be prepared, and forestall him, and land him in jail. That's where he belongs, and all who head that T's brotherhood. But let's have a final look." He unscrewed the top of the vase. He unscrewed the top of the vase, peered in with eyes that squinted and widened. "Hello, take a look at that." He thrust the vessel open under Thunderstone's nose. Light struck into the dark interior of the vase and evoked a yellow gleam. Thunderstone had a brief impression of eyes, or something like eyes. Then Siddons was fumbling in the vase with his fingers. He took something out and held it up. "Tin soldier, eh? But it's not tin, it's gold." The little figure was no longer than Siddons' thumb. Its yellow body was lizard gaunt, and set upon brief bandy legs with great flat feet. It had arms, too, that held a wire-like spear shaft at an angle across the chest, and the head, crowned with golden plumes, was tilted back, and the face turned upward. The face was human, only as a grotesque Halloween mask is human, with a blob of nose, a gaping mouth from just fucking no. The face was human only as a grotesque Halloween mask is human, with a blob of nose, a gaping mouth from which a tiny tongue lolled, no forehead and no chin. The eyes were tiny blue stones, probably turquoise. Siddons weighed the thing in his palm, turned it over and over. "Gold," he repeated. "A little golden goblin. The Indians weren't metallurgists enough to make brass or anything like that." Shut up. "This is probably virgin and worth plenty as a nugget, worth more as an archaeological find." He set it upon the table, pushing back the heap of rifled rawhide wrappings. It balanced solidly on those wide, flat feet. Siddons smiled down upon it. "Aztec influence, you suggested. Or maybe Maya or Inca from farther south. I think we'll just keep that little souvenir. As for this pottery container," he poised as if for a smashing downward throw. But then he hesitated, looked inside again. "Well, well, the little gentleman has a brother." Righto. He drew out another tiny figure, a duplicate. He crowed. "A duplicate," he crowed. "Same size, same shape, same attitude, same spear, same little crumbs of turquoise for eyes." He set down the vase and picked up the first figure. Even the same little scratches and markings, as if the carver duplicated those. What do those Indians think of Mr. Thunderstone? Siddons put the two golden goblins side by side on the table. Cute, eh? How did they both fit in this vase? He stooped and peered in, then straightened and scowled. He put in a forefinger, drew it out again. "Yes," he said in a little voice. "Another of them." He brought it into view and set it by the first pair. It was exactly like them, and Siddons, again at the vase, took out yet another with his left hand, and a fifth with his right hand. "I don't quite understand," he said, and he was speaking to himself now, not to his prisoner. There doesn't seem to be an end to them." He set down the fourth and fifth little warriors, took out a sixth, a seventh, an eighth. These too were set down. Now his hands trembled. He drew back without fishing in the vase for more. "Thunderstone," he said, "I was wrong about that bundle. It does have something beyond nature to it. It's like that purse in the myth, Fortune's purse. You took out the gold in it and more came," and his voice strong again, but with a fierce, semi-hysterical note. "I know where I stand, Thunderstone. I'll be rich!" Well, fuck. He almost sprang back to the table. "Don't you see? All these generations nobody dared open these tabooed bundles, but inside were riches, that is, for whoever dared to come after them." He was taking more figures out of the vase, the little golden procession of them. A little golden procession of them. Each he set on the table. Now there were 10, 11, 12, 15. All alike, gurgled Siddons. All gold, all of them. He had made a row of them like toy soldiers, clear across the table. Fucking ragged again. About as ragged as this story. "You can give a message to Longspear," he said, in a sort of whooping quaver. "Tell him that I ruined his bundle. That I'm not going to fight him or the Tees. They can have their land and whichever riches it contains. Thunderstone, what are you staring at?" Thunderstone's eyes were not on Siddons, but on the row of figures. "For a moment," he replied. It seemed that one of those figures moved. Siddons swiveled around and studied them. "Rot! They only shook or quivered. Maybe I joggled the table." "You didn't touch it," said Thunderstone. "There, Siddons, they moved again, almost next to your hand." Siddons turned away from his treasure again and walked to Thunderstone. With the heel of his hand, he slapped Thunderstone's jowl. "Don't try to make me nervous," he growled. "It won't work, Thunderstone." "I'll say no more about it," promised Thunderstone, watching the table beyond Siddons. Out of the vase was coming another gold figure, without waiting to be lifted out. Thunderstone saw a tiny fleck of radiance first, a clutching hand on the lip of the vase, a hand no larger than a little frog's forefoot. Then the head came into view, with open mouth and plumes and staring turquoise eyes. Then a leg hooked over, then the whole gleaming yellow body was in view, erect and balancing on the vase's rim. The thing moved nimbly, knowingly, lively as a sparrow. It pointed with its spear, pointed at the back of Siddons. The others stirred into motion. bunched like a tiny war party. Ew. Siddons was moving back toward the table, and at first glance did not know or did not accept what was happening. Then he shuddered and cried out, but too late. Couldn't see that coming. His hand had rested for a moment on the table. The warrior that had come the last from the vase made a sort of grasshopper leap, striking with his tiny gold wire spear. Thunderstone could not make out plainly what happened, but he saw Siddons tugging wretchedly and ineffectually to lift his hand from where it had touched the table. A moment later, the other tiny golden bodies had charged, were leaping and scrambling upon Siddons. Up his sleeve, up the front of his coat, one thrust a spear at his eye, another was apparently trying to climb into his ear. Siddons cried out again, but his voice was muffled. Thunderstone could not see what was at his mouth. There was a moving, gleaming cloud, and crawling about Siddons' face and head, as if brilliant venomous insects were swarming there. Siddons dabbed at them once with his free hand, but very feebly. He began to totter, to buckle at the knees. He sank slowly forward. The golden warriors receded from him in a wave, as though in disciplined retreat. They were back on the tabletop, away from him, and the last to leave, their leader, paused to free his little spear from Siddons' hand. Released, Siddons settled prone on the carpet. The leader of the tiny warriors dropped lightly to the floor. Looking down, Thunderstone saw the golden morsel scamper toward him, felt it scale his trouser leg like a monkey on a great tree trunk. The thing came into view upon his chest, fixing him with searching turquoise eyes, poising a spear calculatingly. The spear point moved forward, touched a strand of the wire that bound Thunderstone. He felt his bonds relax. His feet and hands were free. The golden figurine scrambled down again, retraced its hasty progress to the table, and nimbly hopped up again. It fell into line with the others. Thunderstone got my lights again. Thunderstone sat where he was until Longspear returned. It is all easy to interpret, pronounced Longspear when Thunderstone had finally finished his story. Siddons desecrated a sacred object, and that object contained the power to punish him. But you were not only spared, but freed of your bonds. There is no reproach to you. He looked toward the silent form of Siddons. I find no marks upon him, not even a pinprick to show where or how those little spears wounded him. What explanation need be given of his death? No explanation, replied Thunderstone, because none would be believed. It happens that I know certain men who owe me great favours, and who can easily take this body away and dispose of it unknown to the law. Fair enough. Fair enough. That is good. Longspear moved to the table with its discarded bundle, wrappings, and the pottery boxes, and the row of little golden warriors. I have brought back the buckskin sheath for my bundle. I shall restore it as it was before Siddons meddled. For a moment he glanced upward, his lips moving soundlessly in prayer to the gods of his tribe. Then he carefully lifted one of the figures, put it in the vase. Another he put inside, another. One by one he slid them out of sight. When the last had been put in the vase, Longspear lifted the lid to screw on top. Then he paused, turned to Thunderstone, and silently held the vase so that his friend could see inside. Only a single golden goblin could be seen, a tiny carven image with bandy legs, a spear held slantwise, and upturned grotesque face. Yet, though it may have been a trick of the light, the turquoise eyes caught and held Thunderstone's, and one of them seemed to close for a brief instant. The end. the end. So there we have part 2 and the final part of the Golden Goblins. If you watched this far, thanks for watching. Not the best story. A bit disappointing, really. Okay, yeah, what have we learned? We've learned just don't fucking desecrate sacred things. We learned that Thunderstone is really big. No one had any true, real purpose in this story other than to, you know, showcase a bunch of little gremlin dudes. I kind of pictured them like being those little monsters out of the gate, which made the story better for me, you know. I have already posted the next Twitter poll for the next story, so I think the choices are The Man Who Cried Wolf, The Music Box from Hell, my personal favourite, and The Witch. These all sound fairly interesting to me. That was disappointing. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if anyone liked it, although I can't imagine anyone did. So, please go to Twitter, have a vote, see what you like, see what you don't like. Fuck, I just don't know what else to say. Doesn't seem to be anything else to say. It's late. Well, actually it's not. It's like 11:15. For me, late is like 4 in the morning. And then I complain. No, that's not fucking true. I complain all the time. Yeah. Well. I hope you got some sort of enjoyment out of this. Look forward to seeing you again for the next story, which I'm quite sure will be leaps and bounds ahead of this.